In our previous video, we looked at how to use an external CSS file to change bits and pieces of our HTML code. What that did was added coloring and text size to our website. In this video, we're going to do essentially the same thing, but we're looking at a different way to implement CSS. We're not going to use a separate file. So I'm going to go here and exit out of this. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to comment this out. You can actually do so by doing Control/. We've seen comments before. What I'm doing is I'm just preserving this so you can always bring it back if you need to. But when I save it and I run it, now the CSS has gone away because we got rid of the link. We said, hey, ignore this link, so it's no longer going to know about the CSS file. Okay, so after that, let us just make a note here and say this is link for external CSS. So we've seen how to use external CSS. There's also something called internal CSS. I'm just going to do a comment here, internal CSS. And internal CSS works the same way. It's still CSS, but you just write it in the HTML page. So everything that we did in this file here, we're now just going to move over here. So I'm going to close out of this. To write internal CSS, we'll write the tag style, click return. And now this style tag here is essentially saying, hey, the things in here are CSS code. So we can begin to write CS code in this section. Let's try it out. Again, let's just say we wanted to change the color of the paragraph. It's the same syntax, P, squiggly bracket, color, and then just choose your color. Just do blue again. You can see the syntax is recognized. It knows, hey, this is CSS code, not HTML code. If you save it and you run it, okay, might be kind of hard to see on the video, but this is blue text here. Oops. Okay, so it's working as needed. The nice thing about doing this is you don't have to do a link. There's no, like link here or anything. So maybe a bit more straightforward. I don't usually do this unless the amount of CSS that I have to write is short. I don't like to teach people this way because people get confused. They're like, well, is this HTML or CSS? It's on the HTML page. Why isn't it considered HTML? That's why my preference when starting out is to keep these two things separate. But this is an option if you prefer it. So I'm going to keep working with it just for a little bit. Let me show you maybe one more property. So we looked at background colors. I'm just going to add a background color for now, just like a light aquamarine. And now let's add a border around the paragraphs. There are three properties for border. There is border size. Is it called border size? Border, let's see. Sometimes I forget. You can always kind of play around by just doing border dash here to find like different properties you're interested in. It's actually called border width. That's the property I'm interested in. And if obviously I didn't remember it, if I really couldn't find it, I could search like how do I make a border, like how do I control the border size? So border width is the first property. You can do pixels here for how thick you want it. It's just a border, so let's not go too crazy. I'll do 3 pixels. There's 2 more things we need for the border, 3 in total. We need a border color. What do? We did blue and aquamarine. Let's just do red. I know it's going to look gross, but we'll have a nice contrast. So the border is red colored. The width is 3 pixels. And then we have border dash style. So this is the type of border styling you have. You could Google this if you wanted to find all the different options. We can see a few here. I think double is kind of fun. Let's try that. So we have the width, the color, and the style. That's all going to change around our paragraphs. Let's save it. Again, we've already linked it, so we don't need to worry about that. Let's give it a little refresh. Okay. And it's looking kind of nice here in the sense that like the border kind of adds a little bit. You can see the double has these double lines. We did our background color. You could play around with the different constraints. Like just for example, let's say we did this at 20. So I'm increasing the border width or its thickness. And go over here, click refresh. Okay, now they're quite large there. A little bit obnoxious, but just for demonstration purposes here. All right, so that's the border. There's actually one way you can do this. There's a shorter way. I'm going to show you here if you prefer. I'm going to comment these lines out. So I'm highlighting and doing Control// or Command//. Another way to do this, there's a shorthand way. You can write border, colon, and then you do all three properties at once. The order is the width, then the style comes next, then the color. I'll copy and move this in the correct order so you can see it. So width, style, and color. It might work if we do it in a different order, but that I think is what the documentation says. So for width, I'll do 20 pixels, space, the style, double, space, the color, red, colon. And so this line here can be a bit harder to understand if you're just starting out, but it's a lot shorter. This one line does the same thing as everything up here. So if you get used to doing the width, then the style, then the color, you can just concisely write your border that way. If I save this, let's just do black just so I can show you that it changed. And then go over here, refresh. Okay, and now we have these black borders. So that's a new property. We have these different borders here, and also the same thing done there. So that is the internal CSS. You can always write CSS this way. And we looked at internal, external, and then we'll look at one more in the coming video.